What is going on, everybody? It is lunchtime, lunch with the Clydesdale. What's going on, everybody? Hope everybody's having a good time. Corey, Ken, already in the chat. Ken, been on the road listening to CrossFit Podcast since 5 a.m. and driving from Winnipeg to Minneapolis. That is a long drive, brother. What's up, Sarah, Jody Lynn? Good to have you all here. Good to be back home. Flew in from Montana yesterday. Had a layover in Denver. Man, insane. It was a 50-minute layover, gate to gate. It told me it was a 24-minute walk. So I'm hustling through. Missed a turn on the signs to get from B to A. So did about an extra 30 gates of walking. Then redirected, got over to my right gate. I was the last one on the plane right before the door closed, but thank God we made it. And then when we landed in Columbus, I have never landed in a plane so hard in my life. It hit the ground on the runway and all of the baggage compartments popped open. It landed so hard. It was completely insane. But so glad to be back here. Got to see my wife for the first time in 5 days. And it was good to be with her. She was really bummed she couldn't come with us on this trip. But yeah. Ken Walters is on a 10.5-hour drive with stops this morning. I don't envy that after what I just been through. Sarah Cooper, anything under an hour and a half layover is too risky for me. I agree. Because it was a 50-minute layover from the time I got off the plane to the time the plane took off. Not when it boarded, but when it took off. And like I said, I barely made it. I was the last person on. It was crazy. But we're here. We're home. We're safe. We're sound. It's all good. And glad that I got to spend some really quality time with my daughter. Had some good talks on the trip, which we haven't been able to do in a long time. And she called last night. Yesterday was her first day of work at the new place, and she's already doing awesome, and which I knew she would. So I'm so happy for her. But the one thing that this is the one interesting fact that I learned. The population of the entire state of Montana is less than the population of the county where Columbus, Ohio is. So there's more people in Franklin County, Ohio, where Columbus is the center of, than there is in the entire state of Washington. And not Washington, Montana. The entire state of Montana. That is insane. So she's going from living in a pretty decent-sized city to a state with not very much population. So that is fun. What I wanted to get into today, and I'm exhausted. I've had a hard time keeping my eyes open at work this morning. Every time I do this, like these long trips, I'm like, I should take an extra day off just to chill. But I am really struggling to keep my eyes open today. Got to throw my dart. Got to be like Dave. Not too bad. Actually, maybe 1.5 inches from the bullseye on the 16. So right height, just need to go a little left, little right, little left, right. So, yeah, good shot today. Wow. Good question, Denise. Scott, have you thought about retiring in a different state? So I've lived in 3 states in my life. I lived in Pennsylvania growing up. I moved to Florida and worked there for 4 years. And then I've lived in Ohio the rest of my life. My wife and I have actually talked about it. With the current value of my home and what I owe on it, we're within 10 years of retirement. If we sell off our home, we would have a lot of money to pay without any interest, without anything going on in its current state, we would have enough for about 10 years of rent in a decent community. And we have really nothing holding us here in Ohio. I love the people. I love my friends. But if my daughter is half a country away, I'd rather be closer to her than closer to, I don't know. We've really thought about it. We have thought about moving closer to wherever my daughter kind of settles after retirement. My wife was 35 when she had my daughter, so we had kids later in life. And yeah, I think that it's realistic that we will probably move after retirement. Ken says my attempt was invalid, not in the video. Yeah, I do think I'm going to hook up a little camera to the dartboard and bring it on for when I throw my dart. And then I can use it for other things too. But I gotta figure that out. And I've been too busy with other things. This weekend, my mom's 80th birthday is actually tomorrow. No, is actually Thursday. My mom's 80th birthday is Thursday. And then we're having an 80th birthday party for her in Pennsylvania on Saturday. So I've got to hop in the car, drive 4 hours for that, drive 4 hours back. And then my wife is having her second knee surgery next Tuesday. So it's going to be a busy few weeks here. Denise, we're at a crossroads too. California is too expensive right now. Yeah, see, we live in one of the best school districts in the country, and we pay for that. The property taxes where I live are maybe the same, if not more, than my mortgage payment. And so if we could get rid of that tax payment and pay rent somewhere after we sold the house, that is really realistic to move. So yeah, I'm with you. I am with you. So I watched Dave's Weekend Review this morning. I know it was yesterday, but I watched it this morning. And first, huge shout out to Kat yesterday for taking over the lunch show. I'm glad that she hopped on and kept it going. So we had one on Monday. I didn't think we would, but I think I'm going to start doing that, looking for guest hosts to pop on so we don't miss a day, and have someone just take it over for the day. Rather than like just not have one. So I really liked it. I watched it when I got off the plane yesterday, and she was awesome. And if you have not been following her, Catching Feelings, it was very much like that. And I thought she did an awesome job. So let's get into Dave's Weekend Review. A couple big highlights that came out of it for me. And again, I forgot my notes upstairs, so I'm doing this off memory. Dave announced in the Weekend Review, because of the smaller field of 30 and 20, there will be less heats to get through during the day. And because of that, most likely there will not be cuts at the CrossFit Games. I am not a fan of the cuts. I think that there are people that can affect the scores and leaderboard from beginning to end. And when you cut, you mess that up, and it makes the comeback nearly impossible later in the weekend. So I am glad that there are no cuts at the CrossFit Games. He did not say that was a 100% certainty, but he said as of this moment, there will be no cuts at the CrossFit Games. He also talked about the programming being the programming being 80% penciled in, and that he's actually already started testing the workouts. And so he is probably going to dive more into the testing aspect of the workouts now that 80% is done, getting ready for that. And then he went into Denise says cuts, no cuts is good news. Andrew Sten, no reason for cuts if there's only 30 people. Yeah, I mean, he was doing the math kind of in his head during the weekend review. When there's 40 athletes, that's 4 heats, that's 8 heats for the whole thing, and then you add in the 3 heats of teams. That's 11 heats per event. Now they're going to be down to 8 heats per event, with three sets of 10 times 2, and then the 2 heats for the teams. So there's no reason for the cuts. You're right, Andrew, completely. I'm having this thing happen with my coffee cup where the heat from the coffee is so high, it's popping my lid out. And it has like a vent hole in there, but I don't, there it is. See, like it pops up in the back like that. And so I'm trying to have a sip, but it just keeps popping off. Sarah says, In-Affliate semifinal workouts look painful. They do. Anything with a 30-minute AMRAP, I mean, my God. That just looks brutal. But I've never been like a guy who completely understands the programming. I try to. But when I talk to like Carolyn and Jamie, they are so much better at looking at programming than I am, that I really just defer to their expertise at this point. Lex is really good too. Carolyn's wife, she is so good at dissecting programming. But anyway, I think they're really good workouts. I watched Hiller's video today going through it all, and how it's really back to like a very good CrossFit overall fitness type workout for these In-Affiliates, and it's really going to determine who appropriately should be going to the games. And again, I'm going to defer to the people who understand that much better than I do. I can look at it and see that it has a lot of variety. It has a lot of good tests. So I'm anxious to see what happens. I actually need to get into my Heat One app and make my picks as to who's going to qualify in those 11 positions, now that I've had some time to kind of look at the workouts. And I highly encourage you guys to do the Heat One app. It's so much fun. And it gives us something to talk about on the show for sure. So if you're not already, go download Heat One app and pick your, I think there's a game that you pick the 11 people you think are going to qualify on the men's and women's side. So I haven't dove into that yet. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit tomorrow with Corey, because I know he plays along with that as well. So Dave did talk about the running. He called it experiment in the team series. And my only issue with what he was talking about is he talked about how you would hope that 6 people wouldn't cheat. And he went into depth about the cheating aspect of the run event for the teams. But nowhere in that conversation did he talk about the fairness and equity of the running workout in the teams. As Carolyn pointed out so well on Sunday night, and probably the Sunday night before, is that if you're in the basement of an affiliate and have to run up the stairs, or if you're in the middle of a city and have to go out into traffic to do your run, not everybody's 800 meters is going to be the same. If you're in Canada and it's still snowing, I mean, I was in Montana and there was still snow on the ground in parts of Montana. So I'm sure that if you're up in Canada, there are parts that are still snow covered. And then if you're in Florida, you have a nice, beautiful day to go run on. Or storms come in that weekend and you have to run in the rain. It just doesn't make it equitable for every team. Now, looking at the list of the 20 qualifiers at this point, that's unofficial, it looks like, so the big dogs all got in. So it doesn't look like it affected much, but who knows? The way it sounds is kind of convoluted that Boz says that at the conclusion of the event, the scores are official. And that means unless CrossFit initiates a review by requesting a video, none of this is going to be viewed or reviewed. And the 20 that are there are the 20 that are getting in. So unless CrossFit initiates that review, nothing's going to happen with these. So I don't know. He did explain that the reason they did it with team is because it affects the least amount of people to run the experiment, which does make sense. And speaking of experiments, he talked about the online video review from the Masters and that they've already made changes based on suggestions. And with the In-Affiliate qualifier this weekend for the individuals, if you review the video and you give it a thumbs down, you have to give a comment as to why. That will change everything. And without a comment, the thumbs down will not register. So you're going to have to give a comment as to why you are giving a thumbs down to a workout for it to take. Andrew, I think he said it's going to start with the individuals. That they learned from the age groups that they need to have a comment section. So I think it's starting this, when they conclude on Sunday night, and then they start the review on Monday, you're going to have a comment in that section moving forward. I hope so. Because I think if not with these athletes, it's going to be a lot harder, and you're going to need the comment. Corey said, good, some common sense for once. Yeah. And if it does happen this week, if it does, then that is showing me that CrossFit is learning from past mistakes and making the corrections as soon as they can. This is not a correction in how fitness is tested. This is a correction on the process and making sure that they get it right. And it's not affecting anybody else but the individuals. So if you add that component to it, you're not hurting anybody else previously or anything like that. So I think if you can make the change now, make the change now. And I think they realized that they were reviewing a lot of the age groups that didn't need reviewed because they were getting downstroked and there was no reason for it. And so I think that they're looking at it as a savings in their time. When they go back to review these, they'll see the reasons why, and they can make a better determination as to what, if they should or should not have to go further with the review. So I think that is awesome. And speaking of some changes, like in the weekend review, he announced that it looks like they're going to be partnering with Ruck Race USA, which I guess Dave took part into an event where you rucked as far as you could in an hour with 20% of your body weight in the ruck. And Dave took part in that. And their finals are going to be run at the CrossFit Games. They're working on a partnership with them to do that. I think that's awesome. Seeing these types of partnerships show me a change in the willingness to work with others. They've also announced, if you did not see, that they are partnering with Mayhem to do the Everyday Heroes or what they call the occupational games together as a cohesive unit. And they're going to hold those in November, December, where you'll do an online portion in your occupation. And then in December, the top athletes will be invited for a competition. And I believe that's going to be at Mayhem. And so that includes firefighters, educators, first responders, police, and CrossFit and Mayhem are combining and partnering on that. And that, to me, shows some advancement in the thinking with CrossFit doing these partnerships as opposed to trying to do it all themselves. So, How's It says, great move from CrossFit HQ for partnerships and no cuts. Amen to both. Jody Lynn says, oh, that's cool. It is. It is cool. Now, Mayhem in their version, and Carolyn and I were talking about this last night, Mayhem in their version, they brought them in and they put like all the firefighters on one team, all the police officers on another team, all the medical on another team, and then they put them up against each other in a competition. What she's hoping for as an educator is that it becomes like just an overall competition for them to become the best of the best with some individual stuff. So we don't know the details of that because CrossFit was always, they named the fittest medical, the fittest police officer, the fittest military, the fittest, whatever that might be. Mayhem always did this thing with a team competition at the end. So it's going to be interesting to see which direction they go in this partnership for the final. Dan Church, I'd love to make the occupational games. Just wish they had to show proof of employment. Well, now that it's an in-person competition, maybe they do. And then he says, yeah, Indy would be more fun, I think. Yeah, both of them have their, like as a spectator, what I kind of want to see. Because I could see like police wanting to beat fire, fire wanting to beat police. That's a traditional rivalry that's is as old as time, right? So I think that there would be some fun in that, but when you're not really even meeting each other till you get there in the space, I think it'd be better if it was like an individual competition and maybe secondarily you keep track of points and see how each individual occupation is doing, but you're competing individually because you're not made to be a team. You're not practicing as a team. It would make more sense to do it as individual athletes. But that's just me kind of spitballing off the top of my head. So, well, we had a lot of comments from the Sunday night show. We had a lot of engagement and a lot of people watching Sunday night, which was awesome. But a couple comments I just wanted to kind of address, and I'm getting a lot of these either through DMs or through YouTube comments that Lucy Campbell is going to win the CrossFit Games or that Lucy Campbell is going to podium. And I just want to put, this out there. I love Lucy Campbell. If she won the games, I would not be heartbroken. I would be very, very excited. But one thing I've learned in watching this sport for all the years that I've watched this sport is the programming leading up to the games is very different than the programming at the games. The programming at other competitions like Wodapalooza is very different than the CrossFit Games. So just because Lucy is having an awesome season by winning Wodapalooza, by winning Wadland Fest, all of that stuff, it's awesome. It does not mean that she has closed all of her holes at the CrossFit Games. Now, she is a former collegiate swimmer. So the swimming aspects, if they do that at the games, she will be fine in. But where her holes have always been is in pure strength. If there are odd object strength implements, she's probably going to struggle more than she has in other events leading up to the games. So, and she has been out of the sport for 3 years because of a wrist injury. So it's, how is she going to perform on the biggest stage with the brightest lights? Her first time back in 3 years. Now, her first games 3 years ago, she won 2 events. So she does have the capability of doing some big things at the games. Winning them is another story. Because I have fallen in love with athletes leading up to the games, and then they get there and it's a struggle. So I'm just pumping the brakes a little bit on Lucy. I do think she's a great athlete. I do think she's going to be fun to watch, and she'll probably win a few events. But to put it all together in one package on that weekend in a very wide open women's division is going to be tough. And she's going to be competing against the best field she's ever competed against. Wodapalooza is a very stacked field generally, but it isn't the games. Wadland Fest had some good athletes in it. It is not the lineup at the games. And every second is going to matter during those times. So could she do it? Sure. Just saying pump the brakes, because I've seen a lot of people kill the lead up to the games. And when they get there, it's a completely different animal. So just that. Some other people make comments about us kind of insinuating that we were ripping on Brian Friend for his coverage at Wadland Fest. In no way was I trying to rip on Brian for his coverage. I thought he did a great job as a one-man crew doing everything. And I was trying to point out that he was doing everything. He was camera operator. He was play-by-play. He was color commentating. He was producing. He was directing, like trying to do all that on his own. And he did a really nice job with it all. But all I was saying was, I don't want us to settle that is what is acceptable moving forward for everything. I want the major events to have a handful of people doing this thing. And all I was saying is, he said on Froning's podcast, he can do it for $5,000. Well, maybe charge 10 or 15 grand and just add a few more people to the crew. Just so you have a couple more camera angles and maybe a second voice. So it's not just one voice for the entire weekend. That was it. I'm not trying to rip on Brian. I think he did a great job and we got to watch it. And which lately there are a lot of competitions we do not get the opportunity to watch. So take Brian's name out of it. I just think it needs to be a production with more than one person. So, and I've seen a lot of these competitions where I go to the competition and they spend so much money on things that don't matter, like signage. If you're not streaming this thing, and if you're not, and nobody gets to see it, why are you wasting money on signage? When that money could be budgeted into like a 10 or 15 grand, give to Brian or give to Savon or give to Hiller or whoever wants to do this, and let them do a broadcast of the event with a handful of people. Then when you start doing that and people start watching, then you can sell advertising. You can sell other things for this. And then the signage matters. But if nobody is able to tune in and watch, having the coolest looking sign does not matter. So I'm digging more on the event coordinators in the way they're budgeting their money when the live stream is key, as Craig says. we have to keep live streaming in some way. And I was commending Brian for the job he did at Wildland Fest by himself. I don't want to be just the $5,000 version, though, if you're qualifying for the CrossFit Games. If you're qualifying for the CrossFit Games, then we should go with a 10 or 15 grand version and have a handful of people doing it as opposed to one. Now, if it's just like, I don't know, Metcon Rush, right? It's a smaller comp. We're not qualifying for the games. If Brian did that production there, then it would be super cool. And I would be totally legit. Corey makes a great point. Kind of like Legends trying to force us to wear their gear, even though there wasn't a live stream. That just seems ridiculous for me. So exactly. And then you probably don't get the Spartan partnership with the wear company, the apparel company, because you're not live streaming. You could sell them more on their sponsorship if you were streaming your competition with their and forcing the athletes to wear the gear. Then it makes sense. And Dan Church says he is going to broadcast Metcon Rush. Watch me on that one. I definitely will, Dan. But that's what I'm trying to, like, for Metcon Rush, for these competitions that aren't fittest to the coast, like his footage for there was great. But I use the example of like when he went to Dubai, he actually had Lucy Campbell with him in Dubai, and you got two voices. You got Lucy and him. It just changes things up. Dubai is a little bit bigger than Metcon Rush, so it makes sense to bring in more people for that. Maybe charge a little bit more for that, so that we can get a different coverage. That's all I was saying. Be nice if Monster Games had a stream. Again, Monster Games isn't qualifying anybody for the games. Like a $5,000 stream of Brian walking around with a gimbal is cool. At least we get to watch it. That is a viable option. But I've tried to do what Brian's done. We broadcast probably 5 to 10 heats at the Green Beret Project event a few years ago, and I walked the floor with a gimbal, and Charlie and Amy were watching and trying to provide play-by-play and color while I was walking around on the floor, because I couldn't hear myself talk. It was so loud in there that I could not have provided any kind of commentary while I was walking. So the fact that he's able to do that with the equipment he has, again, totally commend him for that. Because I've tried it. It is really, really hard. But I'll tell you, just with me walking around, a lot of families wrote into us and really appreciated that they got to see their kid or their sister or their wife or their husband compete when they weren't going to get that opportunity to make it to Delaware to watch them. So yeah. So that I just wanted to talk about that because I'm not digging on Brian, and I know that everybody's piling on Brian right now. I was trying not to on Sunday night. I didn't want to be part of the herd. I wanted to commend him for the job he did, but also say, hey, dude, ask for some more money and bring in somebody to help you on these bigger events. That's all. So I think that's really all I had on my rundown. I still want to look into all the things that Metfix are offering. So later this week, because we talked about that Sunday night. And because I did have like a mini rant on Sunday night about that we're ripping on WFP for competing against CrossFit when saying they weren't. When Metfix, when Greg was on Savon's show and said they weren't competing with CrossFit, they wanted to work in tandem with it. And now they're doing their own affiliates and doing a workout of the day and such. So I want to dig into that more now that I'm home, and talk about that more this week. So maybe we'll get to that Thursday or Friday. And again, I am all for competition. Competition makes the world a better place, because it forces everybody to do better. When you have competition, you have to be better. So, so there. Jonathan Ortega, but if Brian does a live stream, everybody talks crap, crazy sauce. Yeah, I really enjoyed his coverage. I was able to watch the event when in otherwise I would not be able to. So I was glad he had done it. All I'm saying is now we've learned how to do it in a really good way. Let's step it up to like a little bit more, for the big events, for the bigger events. If you're qualifying people for the games, people are going to tune in, maybe have 2 voices and a couple extra cameras. That's it. But ask for more money. If you're partnering with CrossFit, you should have to do a live stream, and there needs to be a requirement that you do it, and at least at this level. And I think that CrossFit should mandate that. So with that, it's really all I have today. Again, huge thank you to Kat for running the show yesterday, actually taking over the show yesterday. She did an awesome job. So glad she's having success with her show, and we'll keep having her come in, do some takeovers every now and then, to talk to you guys about. So Jenny jumps in. Ortega, that's not true. We were very objective about Brian's stream and said he did well. I think everybody said he did well. I think what all I was asking for is, if you're, again, I know I'm repeating myself over and over again. If you are qualifying people to the CrossFit Games, let's take it one step up. That's all. Yeah. And Jody clarifies, the most uproar in the chat Sunday night was whether Brian got paid or not. That is correct. Nobody said anything about the actual production of his live stream. There was just some comments in the chat about whether he got paid or not. And I don't really care. I've tried to do it at smaller competitions, what he does, and he should get paid something for doing that. It is very, very hard. And Jenny says, I agree. CrossFit should want to contribute to the stream success. They should. And I don't think they need to get intimately involved, but like just require that you have to have this minimal level of stream if we're going to give you tickets to hand to people to the CrossFit Games. You need to meet this minimum level of streaming of your event. So, and we're going to see a couple options of that in the upcoming weeks. You know, we saw what Brian did as a solo person. We're going to see what the Savon group does with Syndicate Crown. And I think they're doing NorCal too. So we're going to get a couple different options of different streaming types and flavors. And I'm excited for it all. And I just want us to come up with the best options possible moving forward that are affordable, because it is ridiculous that Mayhem had to pay $200,000 for their stream. That just was insane. Sevon is going to Crush Syndicate. He mentioned this morning, though, he may charge for the live stream. I don't have a problem with that, but I know a lot of people will. I look at it this way. If I go see a movie at the movie theater and I take my wife with me, I'm paying $20 just for the movie. And then if I get popcorn and a drink, I'm paying $35 for 2 hours of entertainment. If I join Savon's channel to watch a behind the scenes or to watch a stream, I'm paying $20 a month, and I'm getting way more than the 2 hours of entertainment for a movie. And, being a content creator in this space for the last 5 years, this doesn't come without work and hard work. And so what I try to support channels financially that I can, that I watch and that I use for content myself. So, and this is a good topic for later in the week. We'll probably talk about this later this week, because I really believe that what Rogue did they had a basic live stream for free, and they had an enhanced live stream for $25 for the weekend. And I pay that $25 every year, and I would do it every year because it is so good. What they put out is so good and so worth that $25 and it's so innovative, and they keep trying new things. I would pay that $25 every single time. Meredith says, just joining the convo. If they want this sport to become professional, it's in HQ's best interest to provide a stipend to each semi to at least have a baseline stream. Yeah. Or if you want to play, you have to do this minimum level. Nobody's forcing these events to be the partner with the CrossFit Games. and if it's just a base level stream and you can get Brian or Savon to come out and do it for X number of dollars, that's fine. If you're rich and you want to pay for the full production truck version, that's fine too. But there needs to be a minimum level of what it is. Aaron says he also said voluntary, and Ken says it's only at $199. Jonathan says, do you think CrossFit doesn't provide that stipend because they rather show up in person and not be at home on your couch? I don't know. I don't know if that's the way to even think about it. The experience of watching a CrossFit event in person and the experience of watching on a couch are two different things. And there are going to be people that want to do one and maybe not the other, and vice versa. So I don't think that just because, the NFL for years blacked out games because they wanted people to come to them as opposed to watch them. But where's all the money in the NFL now? The money in the NFL is not on ticket sales. The money in the NFL is in TV rights. That's how they make their money. Billions and billions and billions of dollars in TV rights, not in ticket sales to the games. That's just an added bonus at this point. So I think that if you're looking at it that way, it's short-sighted, because if you look at the history of sports and blacking out games on TV, it has never really worked the way they wanted it to. I think you give people both options and you make both options attractive enough that the people that want to do one can do that, and the people that want to do the other can do that. So, and tape delay, those other sports have tried tape delay. It does not work. Live sports have to be watched live, or it's not as entertaining. And Aaron, I don't think they care. I think Wilson Pock cares. I think Rich Froning cared. I think that the people at Wadland Fest cared. But I don't think CrossFit cares if people show up or not. And Meredith says, if that's the case, then HQ needs to be realistic about who can show up versus rather than watching on the couch. I live in California and going to Knoxville is not an option. Right. Again, I've screamed from the mountaintop that CrossFit has never learned from other sports. And I know that they keep saying we're a niche sport and we're smaller and we're blah, blah, blah. But all these streams go out and there's no advertising on it at all. That is a revenue stream that has never been tapped in the CrossFit space. I think Mayhem did it a little where they would do live shots from a booth in Vendor Village. And I thought that was like a step forward in trying to get some revenue on a live stream. But again, I think you have to do both live and stream, because there are people that want both types. And Meredith's correct. There are people in Europe who want to watch Syndicate Crown. That's not realistic for them to fly into the United States to watch Syndicate Crown. It's not realistic for her to fly from California to watch it. Heck, with my budget this year, I have to be very limited in what I can get to. I can't fly to California. I can't fly to TFX and do all this stuff at this back to back to back. So Ken Walters, major sports leagues, TV rights and licensing is the money. Greg was for saving lives and turned down millions in both TV and merch license. Yeah. They had their shot at major TV money in 2018. And that is when Greg stripped it down to what he wanted it to be. And that is the methodology and the videos on the couch with the blue jugs of water. And that's what we got. So Aaron Fraser says grow the affiliates and members to grow the sport. I think there's so many different ways to grow the sport. So many different ways. There's no one answer. There's no one answer. But these are topics for another day, because I've got to get back to work, guys. And so do you. So you knuckleheads, get back to work. Lunchtime is over. I'll see everybody next time on Lunch with the Clydesdale. Bye, guys.